our guest is on set and one is virtual. And let's talk with Mr. Damian Mills of the Child Protection Unit and Anika Plowden-Corentin. Good morning and welcome, ma'am. All right, we'll get to her in a minute. All right, so we are here to speak anti-bullying, Mr. Mills. Let's speak about the campaign. Obviously, this is a serious issue affecting all people. As you have cyberbullying, people could attack you and insult you on Facebook and so on. And sometimes you respond and they feel it's okay for them to continue. So let's deal with bullying in general and speak about this campaign that is undertaken by the Child Protection Unit.
Well, actually, good morning, Brother B. It is always a pleasure to be on the program. Bullying is a perennial problem that we have been combating within the TTPS for as long as I can remember. And so we recognize that there is a need for education and sensitization of both our children and our parents. We would have partnered with the Chosen Hands NGO last year in the Charlottesville district, where we would have engaged with the children of two primary schools in the area, and we would have done a campaign. This campaign did not start last year, but we came on board as the Child Protection Unit last year. And what we would have done is meet the children on their level, because it is easy to just stand and lecture, which is what we generally and essentially do. But when you lecture to children of a young and tender age, you tend to lose them. You know, they have very short attention spans and so on. So we have come up with this constructive way where we can meet them on their level. Children love art, they love to play. And so we have tailored our presentation and amalgamated it with painting, because painting is something that holds your attention. You have to focus. You look at the colors and so on, and it encourages them to interact. And so we presented to them our topic, bullying. We told them what bullying is, and we gave them a nice little slogan, you know, be a buddy, not a bully, and we had them repeating it, and we had them interacting and so on with us. And at the end of the day, we engaged in painting with them. A child came up to me during the session and said, "Officer, I didn't know you could paint. I didn't know the police could do these things." And it warmed my heart as an officer, and we recognize that this is something that we need to continue. Okay. And so what we would have done last week in Castara is quite similar with two schools within the Castara part of your area.
Very good. Yeah. All right, so Ms. Corentin, you tell us about your role and your engagement in this anti-bullying campaign, and just give us an overview as to what the intent is.
Good morning, and thank you so very much for welcoming me to your home this morning. My name is Anika Plowden-Corentin, and I'm the founder of Chosen Hands. We're an art and wellness NGO. So part of the program is really using art as a means of breaking down tough topics, such as bullying, and understanding or helping young persons to understand what are the ways to mitigate against bullying, and that's where the art comes in terms of marrying the mentorship part, the talking part with a creative element.
Mm-hmm. You said using the arts, huh? Did I hear you right? Right.
Yes.
I heard Mr. Mills spoke about the T or the slogan.
Yes.
Following or what helps is a song. I don't know if with your, for example, the ABC is a song, and children learn fast in that regard. The fact that you're using the arts, is the intent for a song to be created against bullying and so on? Tell me.
Well, I think it's something that we can think about. But let me just give some context. Since 2018, we've been working with Surgical on particular projects like this in terms of anti-bullying and bringing awareness to challenges students face in schools. But we use art. So yes, the music is an excellent way as well, because it's a creative space. And it might be even great for students to come up with that whole storyline using music.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So what I can show you, two of the photos or pictures that we created from the NGO, where the students were able to use their own colors and put their notes on the design and really reinforce what was to them by the officers.
All right, good. So, Mr. Mills, the approach from an artistic standpoint, and then you have the the legal standpoint, where the law comes in or steps in the event that somebody needs, or the bullying is so bad that it warrants the presence of the police. Let's speak about that aspect. Well, when a person is bullied and taken advantage of, there is protection from the law side. So let's factor that in, because if people are not aware of the punishment for carrying out bullying, they can feel that I could just continue to bully because there's no punishment, there's no reprimanding for my doing that evil against that person.
The thing about bullying, Brother B, and I want to put out into the public space what we have been lecturing and telling our parents and our children over the past couple of years. Bullying is a pattern of behavior. It is not a one-off incident. So there must be a pattern. So it must happen more than once. It must be intentional, which basically and essentially what bullying is. It's the intentional behavior or action of harming someone either virtually or physically. There is usually a power imbalance. Now, if you were to look at the law, you would not see anything on bullying. You would not see the term bullying. There's no legal reference for bullying. However, there is the Offences Against the Persons Act. And within that act, there is sections 30A and section 30B, which talks about the whole issue of harassment. And then there's the Offences Against the Persons Harassment Amendment Act of 2005, which now allows for a victim to be able to apply for a protection order, before which protection orders usually would come out of domestic violence situations. Now, with this amendment, persons being harassed could apply for a protection order. Harassment and bullying, if you pair them together, you recognize that they are one and the same. And so we tell persons, when you are coming to the police station to make a report, we tend to ask them to shy away or refrain from using the term bullying and be specific. Because under that particular aspect of law, there are certain areas that you can look at and be specific to the particular offense that would have occurred within that aspect of or piece of legislation. For example, we have assault by beating, and so on. So when you come to make a report as an individual, as a victim, you need to be specific to what has happened and not just come and say, I am being bullied, or my child or my son or my daughter is being bullied. Come and say to the police what has happened, and we would treat with it from there. Because under section 30A and B, harassment, there are fines. Now, under the Offences Against the Persons Amendment Act, if a person is found guilty, they can be charged $2,000 or 6 months imprisonment. And that is how serious that whole issue of harassment is. So we tend to tell people, listen, yes, bullying exists, but there is no legal term for it. So use the term that is enshrined in law, which is harassment, which they are both basically one and the same.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Corentin, just give us your portfolio and from which, we know it's a child protection unit, but what is your specific area of focus?
Well, I'm not with the Child Protection Unit. I founded and manage a non-profit called Chosen Hands. We use art and wellness initiative paired with mentorship to help deal with tough topics. And this is a tough topic. So having worked with the Charlottesville Police Youth Club and other youth clubs, we realized that bullying, or as Officer Mills mentioned, harassment is a huge challenge. So this time, we targeted standard 4 and 5 students at Castara and Tuve who came in and we discussed the whole issue of how do you mitigate against it? What do you do? How do you communicate to your parents? How do you communicate to someone senior if you're getting these challenges? And we use art and creativity because it really makes the environment much more relaxed. And quite interestingly, as Officer Mills mentioned, he painted. So too did the representatives that came from Rotary. They painted with the students, and the teachers, they painted with their students, and it gave an environment where they were very relaxed and able to ask one-on-one questions after the formal part took place. And that is what we do in the NGO.
Okay.
We work with young people.
Very good. All right. So there's this element of where the parent tells the child, let's say the child comes home and complain that they have been harassed by their peers, and the parent, in some cases, tell the child, toughen up, hit them a cuff, or encourage violence, Mr. Mills, in their way of dealing or to make a stance on this harassment that it has to stop. Give him a cuff or get in a fight, which really doesn't help. But let's speak about that. I'll take it from you, ma'am, and then I'll come to the officer. When it becomes violent, where does the NGO, do you wait until it gets violent rather, or how do you make your intervention in some cases when the complaint is overwhelming?
Well, what we do is proactive. So by doing these types of workshops and encouraging schools and the PTA and parents to get NGOs like my NGO, like the one that I've founded, and other NGOs to come and talk. So my own is not the end, but the beginning. By having that conversation, that tough conversation, how you treat with it. We should not reach when it becomes two, three, four incidents, and then the child is in a situation where they're withdrawing or worse happens. We need to mitigate before. We need to put things in place before. We need to educate our students. We need to be honest with them and provide safe spaces for them to be able to communicate with us. So when we did treat with and talk with our students at Castara and Palliative, when they came together, they really were very honest with us with how they felt and some of the concerns that they had. So the NGO Chosen Hands, when we use art, it's the pre and not after the situation has happened. So we provide the awareness before.
Very good. All right. So that scenario where it ends up in violence, because that's how we settled it back then when we were children in school. We go bust your mouth and we go pelt you when you reach by with junction. Let's talk to that when the parent who come from the old school like I will, if not sensitive enough to recognize that this doesn't require violence, would advise the child to get in a fight. When it reaches to that, or how do you intervene if the complaint is ignored in some cases? The child feel the only way is to cough it out. Let's speak to that.
Brother B, culture was or is created by people, and people can change culture. And I said that to say that we have established or created a culture as parents where, as you mentioned, we tell our children, hit back. My father always told me two things: never enter into agreement with anybody, and always play with who you know you could beat. and you also said, anytime you come home and you tell me that you got in a fight and you didn't win, you're getting more licks.
Exactly. Right.
And this is something that in the old days, so many parents, engage in telling their children. And it is only as a police officer I recognize that that is so wrong. We need to move away from that whole concept of telling our children hit back. Because when we tell them hit back, we are basically inciting violence. And charges could come out, of that, because you cannot tell someone, or you cannot incite. Inciting also, based on what the offense is, it is in itself an offense, all right? So we always encourage our parents and our families to move away from telling a child to hit back, because when you hit back and you have a fight, fighting also is an offense against the law and can result in persons being brought before the court. And as I would have mentioned on this program before, children can be taken before the court from as early as age 8, right? There is now the children's court. And whilst, when you hear court, you would think about lock up and throw away the key. That is not what the court system or the children's court system is about. It is not about punitive measures, but restorative and preventative. Sometimes it is only after being brought before the court a child can receive the help that he or she really needs, because the court is going to prescribe the best way in going forward, because that is what it is about. That is what the court does. It looks at the child's specific situation. The situation is dealt with on its own merit, and the prerequisite or the required method of going forward in terms of intervention for that child or children is determined. So it's not just about lockup and charges and all of that, no. And we always try to have our parents know that within the Child Protection Unit or the Special Victims Department, of which the Child Protection Unit is a part of, there is the Schools Intervention Unit or Schools Intervention Team, which is the team that I head. And this is what we do. We are a crime prevention initiative, because if we're talking about crime prevention, we have to start with the family. We have to start in the homes. We have to start with our children. And this is why we are so happy that we are able to partner with NGOs such as Chosen Hands and Ms. Corentin to really interact and engage with our children, teach them the law, basic knowledge of how to recognize offenses, how to recognize if they are potential victims of crimes and offenses and so on, so that they will be in a position of knowledge and they will be in the know. And since we have started this Schools Intervention Unit, we have recognized in Tobago that children being victims have subsided quite a lot, because they now know when we complete a lecture and we leave that building or we leave that school, the children there essentially would be able to go home and talk about the law with their parents. Mommy, what is Section 30A? What is Section 30B of the Offences Against the Persons Act? I want to research. So we encourage them to use the internet wisely as well. It's not just about going on and being idle and looking to bully others on the internet. We tell them, listen, go on the internet. Any law that you could think about is there freely available. Where a long time you had to go to the government print and pay like probably $15 or $20. Now it's free and available for anybody to download and read it.
All right, what we'll do, we'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we continue our conversation. We speak about the perpetrator or the bully himself or herself, and we get deeper into that. Sometimes we focus on the victim, and we'll get into the campaign just as we get round up here. But oftentimes the bully is never really focused on, except that we just have to stay away from the bully. And when we examine the bully himself or the person who is perpetrating bullying, needs help. From your NGO, is there any focus on the perpetrator of the bullying?
I think when we do have our workshops, we tend to have subject matter experts. Sometimes we'll have a psychologist or a social worker on board in the workshop that will be able to lend that support. It's quite interesting. When we do the workshops, and persons like Officer Mills speak on the topic, you would find when they throw out the questions, students inside the room would actually say, well, so, I think I have been a bully. I think I have not treated someone fairly. And it provides, again, an environment in the workshop to have someone who's a specialist to treat and talk with that student in terms of explaining to them what they did, how it could be done better. Sometimes there's a level of awareness that these types of workshops provide.
All right, so yeah, and I'm sure you're aware, Mr. Mills, about this whole question of the perpetrator. Sometimes that perpetrator needs counseling, he or she's reacting because of the trauma at home. There's so much that leads to why children lash out in some cases. So let's deal with that and we come to the campaigning and so on.
And this is why we always encourage our children to speak out. Oftentimes children experience being victims of bullying and they remain silent, either because of threats or because of fear of threats or fear of, of the result of speaking out. But we encourage them to speak out. We encourage our parents to not incite our children to try to take it into their own hands, because when they speak out, that is the time when we would be able to recognize this, and there's a need for help. And help is not just for the victim, but the bully as well. Because when children are bullied, or there's the whole issue or the topic of bullying, we have recognized that the bully is also a victim. Let me give you one example. We would have come across a report quite recently at a certain school on the island where there was this bully, and he was bullying children, you know, at all levels. So we would have had an intervention with him, and I started speaking with him, and he told me, officer, and he told me plain, and this is why we encourage, you know, meeting them on their level. We don't go with this whole stern outlook. We pacify the situation, we talk to them on their level. And he was able to be comfortable enough with us to tell us plainly, officer, I was a bully in primary school, because this was a secondary school student. I was bullied, in primary school, and it was really bad. And my mommy told me I have to toughen up. So he decided that when he entered secondary school, he is now going to be the bully to avoid being bullied. And he was able to receive counseling and help, and now he's doing much better. And this is why we encourage persons, and we try to tell persons, don't write off the bully just yet. It is easy to focus on the victim, but the bullies themselves can also be, and you know, oftentimes they are victims as well, or have been victims, and they are carrying around or toting around trauma that have not yet been dealt with. And so becoming a bully, that is their coping method. That is how they decided within their own minds to deal with their situations and avoid being bullied ever again. And it is something that requires, again, education and sensitization. And as I mentioned before, this is where the children's court comes in. Sometimes when they end up before the court will look at the situation and prescribe the best way in going forward and treating with every situation based on its own merit.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So, Ms. Corentin, let's speak about the campaign, where it started, where it's going to end, and where it is now.
Okay, so we annually do a workshop in Tobago, and we like to continue workshops in Trinidad as well. The last quarter of this year, given the interest, I would like to continue from September to December in Tobago. Of course, that would require the support from both the TAG, of course, PTAs, communities, school communities, as well as principals. And we would like to continue because there is a need. We have seen the interest from students. We are into the prevention. We are into providing safe spaces for the conversation to take place. We are in the business of working with other interest groups who would like to work with young people to deal with it in a positive way before it reaches the point of having to make a report. If there's awareness, and as Officer Mills mentioned, when a bully is in a space where we have workshops, they actually identify and get to the root cause why they behave the way they have been behaving. So let's treat with it before and not after. I think it's a unique model that we're using. I'm very grateful for the Tobago School Intervention support. They've been very welcoming, very professional, and super awesome in a workshop. It is something I would love many schools in Tobago and in Trinidad to experience. They are phenomenal. And paired with the arts and the creativity, and finding space where in a relaxed environment we can delve into this topic and actually as young people in this space come up with their own solutions how to deal with it. I think it's a wonderful program to continue.
All right, so yeah, right, excellent. And the Child Protection Unit stands in solidarity and in support of the NGOs or any NGO who wish to undertake any anti-bullying campaign.
Of course.
But just tell us your role in this initiative.
Well, we are the Child Protection Unit Special Victims Department. And within that department, as I would have mentioned earlier, there's the Schools Intervention Unit. And this is the unit that we go out into the schools, and we have grown so much that we are not just about schools anymore. We engage with NGOs like Ms. Corentin, and we have engaged with churches, we have engaged with PTAs, social groups, we do lectures, we sensitize and educate the public on the law and how the law affects them. certain areas in the law with emphasis on the Children's Act 12 of 2012, from section 3 go all the way back. We go into the law and ensure that persons understand, what is enshrined or written within that law and how it can affect them. For example, section 4, which talks about cruelty and the whole issue of neglect and abandonment and the taboo topic, corporal punishment. A lot of parents believe that corporal punishment, was taken away from them by law, and we try to ensure that they understand that that did not happen. There's a certain level of control that has been placed on the administering of corporal punishment, but it has not been taken away. And this is what we are about in the Schools Intervention Unit. We have been operational for the last 4 years, and we have been receiving lots and lots of good feedback, good interaction with the public, because rebuilding trust and confidence, of public trust and confidence in the police, and this is what we are about, whilst at the same time educating the public on serious matters, in taking care of the family and the children. So Excellent. This is what we do with it in the TTPS, and we would like to continue that throughout Tobago and even Trinidad.
All right, thank you for that. And let's get your closing comments from Ms. Corentin. Tell me, yes, as you continue this campaign, we are in full support, and we wish you all the best.
So I wish to thank everyone who have really supported us. I would like to thank the principal from Castara Primary. She actually pulled a lot of the background work together, and of course the Charlottesville Police Youth Club. Lovely working with the Tobago School Intervention team. They've been phenomenal. And I really want to thank our co-sponsor, our key sponsor in this project, Sagico. I think this is a wonderful project. I think marrying mentorship, understanding the law, working with young people and using art and innovation and creativity is a way to go in the future. So I just want to thank everyone for their support. Thank you for having me on this meeting to talk about such a very important topic, and wishing all the students in Tobago a wonderful day and to be encouraged. There's lots of hope.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much for being with us, and of course, all the best to you and your NGO, and of course, Mr. Mills. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having us.